You don't wait until something is leaked in the press to come out with an apology. And you paid $50,000 for this to be covered, and I guess they figured, you know what, let's just leak it to the press.
Not judge.
That's right.
Point blank.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
We should not judge any individual for where they are at any point.
Hotels are not calling the police, and I don't know how many of them are taking, $50,000 to lose the footage, right?
Hello everyone, and welcome to Pink Room XP. Today our topic is the truth about domestic violence. What must we learn from the P. Diddy video? And trigger alert warning here. We know that what we're going to discuss and what you're about to see might be triggering to some people. We want to center specifically the victims of domestic violence at this time. So we're going to start by sharing the video that has probably gone viral all over social media. We're sharing it directly from CNN, who first broke out with this incident that occurred in 2016 and finally came to the light now. Again, we want to let you know that this might be triggering to some folk, but we're going to use it as stepping into starting our conversation for today.
New surveillance footage obtained exclusively by CNN appears to corroborate some of the allegations of abuse against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The video, captured on multiple cameras, shows Combs wearing only a towel, assaulting his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in a hallway at a Los Angeles hotel in March 2016. A lawsuit filed by Ventura in November last year and settled the next day referenced actions that seem to now those seen in this video. There is no audio. According to the complaint, Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye, which, according to the lawsuit, prompted Ventura to try and leave the hotel room. The surveillance video obtained by CNN begins as she enters the hallway. The complaint says, as she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Miss Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. The complaint goes on to say, he grabbed her and then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her. In the surveillance video, Combs can be seen grabbing Ventura and throwing her to the ground. As Ventura lies on the ground, Combs then kicks her twice and attempts to drag her on the floor back to the hotel room. Ventura is seen picking up a hotel phone. Combs seems to walk back to the hotel room, then returns and appears to shove her in a corner. Moments later, he can then be seen throwing an object in her direction. According to Ventura's now settled lawsuit, the pair began dating several years after they met in 2005. They parted ways in 2019. Combs' attorney.
We're going to stop it here. As we said to everyone, this is kind of triggering. It is upsetting. Let's acknowledge that. In a world where violence seems to be the norm, and where videos are violent, simple games are violent, viewing this is very, very upsetting. There's some statistics about domestic violence, but I want to hold space for Theresa and Sean to just give us their impressions of that video, where you were when you heard it, what were your initial reactions when you saw the video?
I actually saw the video on social media versus the news, and I believe I was at home, and my reaction was I was very angry. One, that this man who's much stronger physically, a little stronger, could violently assault someone whom you said you love and you've been with for, that was 8 years at that point. And why is it that this power and controlling mentality is what's ruling your life versus the love for this individual?
For me, as a grown adult, I've been through my share of trauma and, violence as a child, and that was very difficult to deal with. But I was sharing with one of my sons as we were talking yesterday about this issue. I said, I can't imagine as an adult having to deal with that, because as a child, you're under somebody's authority and care. But as an adult, when you are your own person, having to feel that you have no control, I can't even fathom the trauma that this woman and so many women and men, as well, go through by submitting to this kind of violence and control.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to add some of the statistics that we have on domestic violence, and I think some people, not very many, but some people may try to excuse this away. But we want to center that domestic violence is a real and present problem. We're sharing statistics with you from the United States, but they're global statistics that mirror or even higher. And during the pandemic, we all may remember that we saw the escalation, right, of domestic violence when women and men were forced to be at home. So these are some of the things that we found out from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And here we're centering again. If you are in a situation of domestic violence, here is a number that you can call: 1-800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-7233. That's with the National Domestic Violence Hotline. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner. 1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner, and the data is unavailable on male victims because, as we know, males do not report because of all the stigma that is placed upon them, right? Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of the crime in the United States. That's significant. 15% of the crime can be accounted to intimate partner violence. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This violence includes behaviors such as slapping, shoving, pushing, all of these and more. On a typical day, there is more than 20,000 phone calls placed to a domestic violence hotline nationwide. 20,000 on a typical day. Women between the ages of 18 to 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. And that grabbed my heart because they're young, you're just starting life, and usually there's a lot of illusion around love and partnership. And they are the ones that are most commonly abused in intimate partner relationships. And domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior. And here, once again, we say this number: 1-800-799-7233. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you are watching this or you're listening to this and you're in a situation that you think maybe it happens sometimes, but not all the times, I'm not sure. It may not be even physical, but it could also be mental. Please pick up the phone and call and help someone to guide you through 1-800-799-7233. Okay, ladies, that was hard to watch, and the statistics to me are scary. Again, let me repeat that it came to the light in the news that the statute of limitation has expired. So Mr. Sean Combs, P. Diddy, whatever his name is, will not stand trial for this. He may not have any consequence to this because the statute of limitation passed. This happened in 2016. As I said, he came out with an apology today or last night or when it was. I have not watched the apology. I don't know if Teresa and Sean have watched it, but here's my take on it. You don't wait until something is leaked in the press to come out with an apology. And you paid $50,000 for this to be covered, and I guess they figured, you know what, let's just leak it to the press, whatever that may be. But Teresa and Shonda, I am talking enough. Let's hear from the both of
No,
you.
and one of the commentaries that I came across when they showed the video was the responsibility of the hotel, and I'm thinking, yes, what kind of a business, and I guess it comes down to this. It's unfortunate that this particular scene of violence is not rare. It's a constant in hotels, and hotels are not calling the police, and I don't know how many of them are taking, $50,000 to lose the footage, right? It's but I think that who could have done something to help the woman, help, this woman, this particular, for this particular case, they didn't do anything to help her. Yeah. Because that evidence, and I think that the statute of limitations should have some kind of
exception
for, she had no way of proving, right? Because they're like, oh, and I think that one of the biggest issues is the fact that people on the outside looking in, they're like, oh, why didn't she leave him? Why didn't she leave him? And, there was another artist, a songwriter who came out, a man who said that, P. Diddy basically groomed him to be groped and, to have sexual intercourse with Cuba Gooding Jr., right? That was what allegedly, right, what happened. And he said, that he was threatened, if you say anything, things are going to happen to you. So we need to understand that people are scared. Once they have violated your trust, once you have been physically demoralized and, and mentally, enslaved, because it's really that, that control, it's very difficult to escape that situation. Right. It's not easy, yes, and we should not pass judgment on any of these individuals, because it's, because a lot of, I think there's a lot of men, especially out there, and even women who might think, oh, these are just gold diggers wanting an opportunity. And because that's what P. Diddy said in one of his statements, right? These are just people out trying to make some money off of me.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
I like the statistics, right? Because the statistics put some numbers to how things are really happening out in the world, right? If we had a fourth person on here, 1 in 4 will have experienced that type of assault, right? Because that is a all-out assault, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of the above. So those statistics really can set a picture for some people to see how real it is. If you're in a room at a restaurant amongst peers or family, you just point 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so again, I too like the way it was framed, Norfolk, for us, and thank you. And the craziness behind all of this is that it's not new, right? We know these things are not new. Videos have been available for a numerous amounts of years, right? And then when you look at this thing with the statute of limitation, there should be no limit, right? Because it primarily affects women, girls, and children. When you look at children who've been sexually assaulted, if they don't file within X amount of time, it still doesn't take away that person should be held accountable. There should still be some civil lawsuit held against him where he is accountable for that assault on another human being. Look, we're in an era right now where we're talking about immigrations coming to America, and this is what they're doing, and they should be held accountable. He is an American citizen, and he should be accountable for domestically in this country in assaulting another human being so violently, and thinking that it's okay because you gave money and how many years later you apologize. Only because that video is out did he apologize. he would not have apologized. And this is because it's many, look how many other women, girls, and men are also experiencing this, and they're fearful. And I know I'm jumping a little bit, but to get to that point too about, oh, why don't they just leave? It's not like that. But imagine you're on a job that you have to work on in order to survive. You don't just get up and leave, right? Because you have to take care of yourself. And some women or men, girls are in these experiences because they just don't have that leverage at that point to make a shift. That's why during the pandemic, it became very important to start talking about plans. How can these things happen if you're in these situations?
Right.
So this is just really, again, it's power, control, statute of limitation. That's about power and control. Who's making those rules? Apparently, it's people who are not really affected, right? That's just my thoughts. Ladies.
I want us to not reframe, but I want us to take back up several things that you ladies, 4 things here, and maybe those could be our what must we learn, right? And these are the 4 things. Hotels, what must we learn and what must we change? Why don't they leave? That's always the thing. But why don't they leave? They like the money, they like blah blah blah, they like the sex. Let's talk about that. What must we learn about that? The power dynamics that both of you have mentioned, right? You're in a relationship and this person has power. He's male, he's threatening. He may not even have money, but the physical force. Let's just talk about that. Let's talk about the statute of limitation, what needs to change. So I want us to now look at reframing our usual damage control to what things must change in these particular 4 areas that both of you have mentioned. So let's start with hotel and hotel rules. Now, we all know, we've all seen on social media those videos where human trafficking is big in hotels, right? Human trafficking is big. These people know what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And they're harboring and allowing because they're getting paid, right? So what are some things that we must learn and must do to change that when it comes to hotels?
I know that everything comes down to the bottom line, and it's not in the hotel business best interest to denounce the crimes that are happening under their roofs, and it's so tragic. It's so tragic. Can you imagine if this is what we saw? Can you imagine what goes on inside the room? What's actually happening? That should be, I think, the number one trigger for us to understand that there's much more to this than the video. And but I think any hotel and I'm sure that this is not a Motel 6 they were in. This is not a Holiday Inn Express.
No.
Right? This is probably a high-end hotel. And for them to have taken $50,000 for their silence is something that as a community, I think this is somebody's daughter that this man was violating, physically, was having, just under his control. This is somebody's daughter. This can be anybody's daughter. And I think that when we put it in that context, we have to understand that we need to do something about this. We need to make somebody accountable for this. If this man isn't going to be, if the law is not going to make this man accountable for his actions, then you go, to the hotel that's allowing this to happen, that's taking money to be quiet. Because if that footage would have been successful, he would have been made accountable for his actions at that time. And, and he would still be within the statute of limitations to be made accountable for it. So, it's, we have to follow the money, as always. And we have to make sure that we as a society are not turning a blind eye to the fact that these are our children. This young woman is, somebody's child, and I have 2 daughters. I can't even fathom that anybody would treat them in that manner, and it's painful to see other women suffering in this way.
Yeah.
I think in these no-tell businesses, right? Mind you, I said no-tell business because that's what they're in, not to tell what's
Not
happening.
telling.
Oh, no
I
tell.
love it.
And let's face it, the reality is that it is about the money. And they too don't want to become a victim, right, of their businesses being weaned out as a
Blacklisted.
place, yeah, blacklisted, right, as places that allow these things. So I think what needs to change is that, as best as possible, a surface piece would be probably to educate the consumer to know that it's a possibility that you're going to stay at a hotel, that if a crime is committed or something is stolen, like, they're not going to be held accountable for it. That you have to know that you may want to stay in places that are willing to ensure your safety, because they should ensure our safety. When we invest our dollars in staying in their places, granted they're offering a public service, they should still make sure that safety is their number one priority. And we should really do research to find out whether these places have our safety and security in their best interest. And if not, maybe we need to find other places and or create our own. Now I don't have the dollars to do so, but that's something worthy of those who may be listening or in the investment business. We need to make these type of services available so consumers know that when you're staying places, they may not help you if a crime has taken place. So you might want to look other places. And I'm wondering, even that phone call, aside from the video, the phone call that went through, whatever happened to it? Was it received? Was it disconnected? Did anyone ever respond? Did they call back to see? Did they go back and check this phone? You can't play with 911. You're dial 911. And they respond. Either they come out, they call, or they send the police. So that's one of my things that I think needs to change. We need to become much more educated consumers about the businesses and services we're using, and a lot of it requires fine print reading. But we really need to do more research about businesses and places we use if they're not about safety, security, equity, all of the above.
Sean, that you mentioned the call, but let's remember that in the lobby area, not only are there cameras, but you also have people who can see what's happening.
Correct.
Right? So someone who worked at the hotel, or more than one person, saw this happening in the lobby areas. What did they do? Clearly nothing, right? I believe if there are legal audits to these businesses, things would change. If the law was to say, listen, hotels and businesses, if there are crimes that are committed there against women, children, because you have a lot of trafficking of little children in these hotels, you will we will shut you down. Trust me, it will change. They will be calling the cops in every second, because the money under the table will not keep them from being shut down. So there needs to be some type of law. There needs to be and maybe this is a start. Laws where there are audits, where we're looking at your hotels. This incident occurred. We're going in, we're investigating. It happens again, you're shutting down. But again, as Teresa said, follow the money. But there needs to be some heavier weight for these hotels and motels, as Shonda said, to work. Let's talk a little bit about why do they stay. That's a constant thing, and that people seem to not understand. Well, they can just walk. They have 2 legs, right? They can just walk out. Why don't they stay? In the case that we previously saw, a lot of people said that the victim was there for the money, right? She liked the money, so that's why she's there. I've heard where people say, oh, they like the sex, that's why they're there. Total misunderstanding. And that's why we're saying that we need to learn from this video. It's public. Everyone knows these people. Total misunderstanding. Why do victims stay? Teresa, Shonda.
Well, first of all, I think that Shonda hit it on, right on the head when she said that, these individuals, the first and most likely reason that they stay is because they don't have an out. They don't have an alternative. I don't want to get political here, but not too long ago, a prominent political figure said that we as a society here in the US had invented radical feminism, that we had invented
Yes.
no fault divorce. I don't know if you heard that, but
Mhm.
when that person said that, I just, like, all the bells and whistles went off in my brain. And this is what it is. If you as a society take away the ability of a woman to leave a marriage
Mhm.
without having to prove anything, because in the past you had to prove that that man had cheated on you. You had to prove that he hit you, that he violated you. You had to prove all these things in court.
And
As a
more than once.
victim,
It couldn't be one incident either.
Right.
and as a
Multiples.
victim, you had to still go and face the shame of the situation you were in publicly, and look for all of the evidence in order to be granted a divorce. Now, let's understand this. So when we as a society said victims shouldn't have to go through that. If they need a divorce, they can get a divorce, no matter what, right? No fault divorce. You just go, you need a divorce, go and get it. So this politician is saying what we did back there was wrong. Can you imagine what he's doing is laying the foundation for all of the advancement that we've had about helping domestic violence victims get out of the situation that they're in. We're going to go back, and I'm not saying that it already happened, but the rhetoric is out there. They're talking about it. We need to backtrack on these, no fault divorces. Wow, that just speaks to the fact that there is a desire to control the other person, and you're going to stay in your place. You're going to stay in this marriage because that is your obligation once you get into it, because you want it in. You want to marry this person. You want to be in a relationship with this person. Well, now you're going to stay here, right? What I believe is that the reason women do not leave these spaces of violence is not because they like to be controlled, or they want to, or they like the sex, or they want the money. The reality is that if a woman stays, is because she doesn't have another alternative. What we can offer is no judgment, because it is not, we are not, if you're not living that situation, then you really should not tell a person, why aren't you leaving? Why haven't you left? You have no idea. There are so many factors. And I just pray that every woman and a woman with children, especially if they are in those places, that they will know that there is some support and some help for them when they're hopefully ready to make that decision before it's too late. Because unfortunately, many of them aren't able to make that decision in time, and then we lose them. Their lives are unfortunately lost in this process.
Key word you said, Teresa: do not judge.
That's right.
Point blank.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
We should not judge any individual for where they are at any point in their lives, because we are not walking in their shoes. And just to go a little historically, domestic violence was actually used in terms of protecting animals, right? And it's just ironic how it's connected now to violence toward individuals. The term that is used primarily now is intimate partner violence, right? But I like to use them interchangeably, because sometimes when children are abused, it can also be considered domestic violence, right?
Right.
So why don't people leave? As I said, do not judge. Remember, love is a real thing. And however you perceive love to be, that's what love is, right? And so some individuals still do love their abusers, and it is okay. Sit with that for a minute. It is okay to still love someone who has hurt you. And again, why aren't we leaving? Like you said, Teresa, and I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. When you don't have an alternative, right? Now, some people say, oh, yes, they do. They can just walk out the door. Oh, yes, they do. There's so much information. Oh, yes, they do. There's internet, there's World Wide Web, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes within themselves, they don't have the alternative mental shift and or fortitude and or abilities to remove themselves from something that has harmed them, I want to say, if not even routinely, but sometimes it's so subtle how the abuse begins that you don't even realize what is happening to you. So it takes a while to shift from that to say, why don't they just leave? It is really not that simple for individuals who are being physically, mentally assaulted. And in order for them to recognize that, they have to know that it is a point for them to remove themselves. Sometimes they see the violence right before them, but they don't. So what we should learn from this video is that there are choices, there are opportunities. When you are ready, please, if you can, prepare yourself. If not, if you have the opportunity to remove yourself immediately, do so. Remove yourself immediately. But if there's a plan and there's a process, there's people out there, there's resources available, and continue to try and love you, go deeper towards you, and not continue to blame you. So we should learn that these things don't have to continue. They do, unfortunately, and it's just not easy for people to walk away, even when they are being harmed.
Right.
And I think from this video, what we can also learn when we talk about why women stay, sometimes they're afraid that it becomes worse. Right?
Right.
She removed herself. She got stomped. She got kicked. She got dragged.
So
right? We need to realize that too. That sometimes the fear is, you know what, let me just take this slap, because if I decide to walk through that door, it may be worse. So no judgment. I think that really is it. And I think the two of you talked a little bit about power dynamics. So I want us to go into the statute of limitation. Shonda, you're in contact with, you may know, but I know that New York extended their statute of limitation around sexual violence. Remember? They extended it to, was it 10 years or something? Maybe these are things that states need to do. Extending these statutes of limitation, because now we see a crime that took place. The world is seeing it on video, but this person is going to walk away scot-free.
Norca, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to also add to that last part. And I think that there's a lot of shame.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shame.
Yes.
For people to know that you allowed yourself
yes.
to be put in this position. And so I think that makes it even more difficult for people to leave the situation, because there's, it's shameful that people know what you permitted.
Right.
And there, because there's so much judgment around this, then it makes it, I think, a big issue. Shame. So okay, now back to
thank you for that, Teresa.
One moment too. Can I just
Very important.
add to that? You made me think of something also when you talk about the shame. We also have to look at culture.
Yes.
Sometimes culture influences the remaining in situation.
And sometimes culture, not even ethnic culture, but sometimes denominational cultures, where women are told from pulpits that it is their duty to stay. You need to stay. And as I heard recently, which I was flabbergasted, that people are told that, once you marry, it's for your soul salvation. So you need to stay within that abuse and work it out because your soul... Yeah, so we need to look at those. But let's not digress. Let's go to the statute of limitation, because there's a legal part here that is missing. This thing became public. It's out there. It's a crime. Yeah. But now
nothing's gonna be done.
You get to walk away.
A civil lawsuit should still be held against him. Remember O.J. Simpson? There was still a civil lawsuit, right?
Right.
So I think that in terms of what should change with statutes or limitations, you need to allow victims to be a part of your decision making and your policy making, and not people who don't look like them, who don't experience it, or who are ashamed and embarrassed to talk about it, right? Because I'm not going to exclude that just because you're in a position of high power does not mean you've not been abused and assaulted in your life. You may have been able to push through or tolerate it or forced into that position because it now gives you power and control. So there's so many layers to that, but I think victims need to be allowed to be a part of the process of the policy making and the laws when it comes to the statute of limitation for these types of crimes and crimes, period. For instance, some people don't find out until later that, you know, they were robbed of something from a family member, and they find out after death or so. That there should be no statute of limitation as to you being able to take a legal course of action against an individual like this. So in a circumstance like this, I think it's extremely valuable that people who are in the social spheres of dealing with women and children who go through these types of situations should be sitting on those benches and at those tables. And maybe we just need to do like Shirley Chisholm. If they don't have a chair sitting there, we need to bring our own chair and take a seat and start to have impact. And being in those positions where we can affect the policies that are being put out there in the laws. I think that's what needs to change. You need to have people who are part of those experiences say, don't tell me I only have 2 years to disclose this. I need to be able to disclose it when I am emotionally capable of doing so.
I think that it really affects children who, you know, were violated when they were children or mistreated, and then as adults, they can't pursue a legal, route for their grievances because, they unfortunately are out of that statute of limitations, right? So, we have to go back into the legislature to make sure that we are actually benefiting victims and not, just telling them, no, you can't, it's you missed your mark, so you can't say anything anymore.
We want to thank everyone for joining us today. I think that the conversation around domestic violence, about what is happening, but most importantly, what needs to be done, what is owed these victims, I think that some very not innovative or creative, but necessary points have been made in this Pink Room XP today, and we hope that people who have the power, who have the ability to do something, and even those of us who feel that we don't, may raise our voices and get some much needed change, because domestic violence is real, and honestly, it's happening right next to us, and sometimes we don't even know. Thank you, Theresa. Thank you, Shonda. This has been really good. Appreciate the conversation as always. And please, we invite you, have this dialogue with your young people. Have this dialogue with the people in your family. You may be surprised at some of the things that you may learn. We want you to extend the conversation, extend the Pink Room in your home, and have those dialogues and conversations. Have a good one, everyone.